Ladies, gentlemen, and Haradrim of all ages, as this video comes out, we have now just reached the early access release of Diablo 4 for anyone who pre-purchased the larger versions of the game. I hope you're all having a blast playing the game already, if you are, but whether you are playing yet or just chomping at the bit for your opportunity on the full release June 6th, either way, your first question is probably, how will you get to level 50 the fastest, as this stage of the game is realistically just sort of a precursor to the full game, which starts to unlock properly in World Tier 3. So how can you get there the fastest with your respective class? Today I'm going to be going over my theory crafting for the leveling path that I've chosen for the Barbarian class, talking about which skills I'm taking and when, which technique slot that you're going to want, what legendaries you want to look for, most specifically the ones that you can manually unlock the aspect for by completing specific dungeons along the way, and also which weapons you want to use and which ones you want to use with each skill. Without further ado then, let's get down and dirty into the skill points themselves. First up, of course, is your base skill. For leveling, you pretty much exclusively want to go for Lunging Strike as your basic. It provides a lot of movement speed as you can obviously lunge from enemy to enemy very nice and quickly. This may not be the highest damage ability that you can get on this list, but it is very quickly solving one of Barbarian's early issues, which is movement speed, and that's a big deal as we talk about blasting from level 1 up to level 50. Then you want to take the enhancement for this, which gives Lunging Strike a 30% damage increase and makes it heal you for 2% of your max health when it hits an enemy that is above 80% health. As well, you want to set the skill to use your dual wielding weapons, as this will increase the attack speed and therefore the fury generation of this skill. After that, we jump to our core skills, and you want to focus on Rend here, a cleave attack that applies a strong bleed to all enemies that are hit. This is a bleed build first and foremost, as bleed simply does a ton of damage even in group clearing scenarios where damage over time classically has been weaker in previous Diablo entries. From here, you want to get some enhancements for Rend. The first one makes the direct damage part of Rend extend the duration of the vulnerable debuff on enemies by 2 seconds. Vulnerable makes enemies take 20% more damage as a base, but we can increase that as well. It is really strong as a status to apply to things, so of course it is going to be a part of this build. Then we take Furious Rend, which makes direct damage from Rend give you 4 fury per enemy hit, up to a maximum of 20, which is about a 60% refund on the overall cost of Rend when used in AoE. After that, you want to put 3 points into the pressure point passive over here. You can change off of this later if you want to, but it is a great early synergy for Rend, with Lucky Hit up to a 30% chance to make enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds when hit by a core skill. Rend has a 33% Lucky Hit chance, which means combined with this, it has a 10% chance of applying the vulnerable status. Combine that with the Rend enhancement that also increases the duration of vulnerable by 2 seconds every time that you hit with it, and that is a really nasty combo even to start off with. We get another way of applying vulnerable later on, so you don't necessarily need to keep this the entire time that you're leveling up, but for now, this is absolutely invaluable. From here, you want to take Ground Stomp in the defensive category of skills. This is just a nice big AoE 3-second stun on a 16-second cooldown. Take the enhancement to increase it to a 4-second stun on top of that, then we go back and put a second point into Rend, which will unlock the Brawling node of skills. And here we'll be picking up Leap, which is just a decent range jump forwards with okay damage that also knocks back any nearby enemies when you land. More than anything, this is just another way of increasing our mobility, as again, our goal is to level quickly, and part of leveling quickly is moving quickly, as base walk speed is terrible. Get the first enhancement for this as well for a 4-second cooldown reduction if Leap doesn't hit any enemies, making it even better as just a general movement tool. Then take Power Leap, which gives you 40 fury if Leap damages an enemy. You'll want to set this skill to use your two-handed bludgeoning weapon, simply for how it will interact with the key passive that we pick up later on in the build. After that, go round back up and put 2 more points into Rend once more, as again is our main damage ability. This unlocks the Weapon Mastery node cluster. Pick up Rupture here. This lets you do a frontal attack that pops all bleeding damage that is slowly ticking away, and then grab the enhancement that makes it cause an explosion that applies more bleed damage on the way out as well. Then you'll want Warrior's Rupture, which gives you a 20% boost to attack speed for 4 seconds after using Rupture. Rupture has a 10-second cooldown, so you get to have this attack speed boost active around 40% of the time during active combat. After this, you want to put a point into the Hamstring passive, which makes it so that any enemy that is actively bleeding is also slowed by 10%. This is great as it allows you to activate any armor skills that boost damage against slow or crowd-controlled enemies just by having this bleed applied. It also is a great gateway to the Cut to the Bone passive that we want to take all 3 ranks of, as they increase the bleeding damage that enemies take when vulnerable by 18% at max ranks. This will unlock the ultimate skill node cluster, and here we pick up our final active skill, Iron Maelstrom.
I am complete.
This lets you stun surrounding enemies for 2 seconds, apply a strong bleed to enemies in front of you, and do just a pop of AoE damage around you as well. After that, we want both enhancements for the skill. The first one gives Iron Maelstrom a 10% bonus crit chance, and also 20% bonus crit damage. Then the more important second one reduces the cooldown of Iron Maelstrom by 1 second every time you deal direct damage after swapping weapons. This is part of why Rend and Rupture will be set to use your two-handed slashing weapon, Lunging Strike is set to use your dual-wielded weapons, and Leap is set to use your two-handed bludgeoning weapon. Every time you swap between these different skills, you lower the cooldown of this massive damage skill by 1 second, on which note, this is where we go back up to Ground Stomp and take its second enhancement, Strategic Ground Stomp, which will give you a reduction to your ultimate skill cooldown by 1 second for each enemy that is hit by Ground Stomp's damage. After that, you want to put 3 points into the Pit Fighter passive down here, which will give you 9% bonus increased damage to close enemies and 6% damage reduction from distant enemies. As a melee focused class and build, this is just pure goodness for us. Then 1 skill point into Slaying Strike, which will give you 8% increased damage on enemies that are under 35% health. And then 3 points into Exposed Vulnerability. This makes it so after using a weapon mastery skill, using a core skill will make enemies vulnerable for 3 seconds. This means once you use Rupture, the next time that you use Rend, you will apply Vulnerable. Then you can use Rend again after that to extend the vulnerable debuff even further. Then head all the way back up to your basic skills and take Battle Lunging Strike to make Lunging Strike also apply a small bleed effect on each hit. With that, you've unlocked your key passives section, and down here we want to take the Walking Arsenal passive. This makes it so that dealing direct damage with any of your 3 weapon types gives you 10% increased damage for 6 seconds afterwards. These stack, so if you attack with a dual-wielded weapon, then attack with a two-handed slashing weapon, then attack with a two-handed bludgeoning weapon, you will do 30% increased damage. On top of that, if all 3 bonuses are active, it gets a 15% bonus damage increase, so you actually deal 45% increased damage when all of these bonuses are active together, and with that, the main core of your build is complete. We have all of our active skills, and most of our general synergies are active. Then head back to the Brawling Tree and grab all 3 ranks of the Swiftness passive, which will give you a 12% general movement speed increase, once again just for the increased mobility. Then back down to the Ultimate node, we're going to be taking some more passives. Take 1 rank of Tempered Fury over here. This increases your maximum fury by 3, and just lets you get both of the other passives here, which are both incredible. We put both of these to max ranks, at which point Furious Impulse will give you 6 fury every time you switch weapons, and then Invigorating Fury will heal you for 9% of your maximum health for every 100 fury that you spend. This is a ton of health regen with the way that we'll be playing and the way that we'll be spending loads of fury. Jump back up to the core skills all the way over here to put the final point into Rend, then go over to the defensive node to pick up some more passives. First grabbing all 3 ranks of Imposing Presence over here, which will give you a 15% increase to your maximum health, then all 3 ranks of Martial Vigor for 9% damage reduction against elite enemies. With that, we have 5 skill points left to spend if you've gotten all the bonus ones from Renown, and we'll use this for a bit more damage reduction down to the Weapon Mastery tree, taking all 3 points of the passive skill Thick Skin, which gives you a 1.2% amount of your base health as Fortify every time you are hit by an enemy attack. Then finally 2 ranks of Defensive Stance, which increases the damage reduction that you have while fortified by 4%. That's all of your skill points taken care of, but arguably just as importantly are your weapon choices and your technique slot choice as well. As for your dual wielding weapons, one-handed swords have the best bonus for us specifically, as we are dual wielding during our basic skill, and this gives you a 10% chance to gain 5 bonus fury when hitting a crowd controlled enemy. Every time we apply bleed to an enemy because of hamstring, you will be slowing them and thus activating this effect. If you can get 2 one-handed swords at the same time, that is ideal, but while leveling that is unlikely, as generally you're better off just using the best one-handed weapons the game will give you statistically, rather than just focusing on only using one-handed swords. Your two-handed bludgeoning weapon can be whatever you find, it doesn't really matter that much. Then your two-handed slashing weapon should either always be an axe or a sword, with the other of the 2 taking your technique slot, so you can have both of these bonuses active constantly. The two-handed axe expertise bonus is up to 15% bonus damage against vulnerable enemies, with the rank 10 bonus being 10% increased crit chance on vulnerable enemies too. This is obviously incredible, as a large portion of our skills are built to keep the vulnerable debuff on enemies as much as physically possible. But then the two-handed sword expertise is up to 20% of all direct damage that you deal is inflicted as bonus bleeding damage, with the rank 10 bonus being a 30% bonus to all bleed damage that you do for 5 seconds after killing an enemy. Again, this is a bleed focused build, and so this is an incredible boon to what we're doing here. With that covered then, let's talk finally about our legendaries then. One to look out for is the Aspect of Might for a 20% damage reduction for a short period period after using Lunging Strike. You can get this aspect from a dungeon in Act 2, and then there is the Rapid aspect as well, which increases the attack speed of your basic skills by 15 to 30% attack speed depending on the roll. You can get this as an aspect from a different dungeon that's in Act 2, so you can actually guaranteed get both of these effects very early on, as early as level 30, even without RNG. Then there is aspect of Retribution, which gives distant enemies an 8% chance to be stunned for 2 seconds when they hit you, which is quite nice, but it also gives you 20 to 40% bonus damage against stunned enemies, which synergizes wonderfully with Ground Stomp. This one comes a bit later on in the game, but again it is an aspect that you can guarantee yourself from completing a dungeon. Then finally we have the Skullbreakers aspect over here. This one has no guarantee of dropping at any point. It isn't an aspect you can unlock from a dungeon, but if you happen to get this as a legendary drop, just know that it will boost your damage with this build quite an impactful amount, making it so when a bleeding enemy is stunned, they take 22 to 40% of their total bleeding amount as physical damage, just creating another really nice synergy in this build for Ground Stomp. And that's it then, everyone. A full-on guide to how I'm going to be leveling my Barbarian when I play it in Diablo 4, and how I think that you should probably be leveling your Barbarian too if your main goal is just to reach level 50 as fast as possible. Obviously the build will change as we get into World Tier 3, that's expected, but this is, in my opinion, the fastest build to get to that point with, so that we can actually enter what is properly Diablo 4. I hope you've enjoyed this bit of theory crafting, and I really hope it helps you out on your Barbarian journey if you choose to follow it too. Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.